Okay, here we are. My name's Mr. Jackson,
And I'm Mr. Apple.
and for the next couple of minutes, we're going to talk about assessment.
And how it relates to you.
And basically, the two of us decided to sit down and partner up to do something like this because I really wanted to give a screencast to my students in the Faculty of Education at Laurier.
And we wanted to prepare something for our colleagues here at KCI. We've been working in isolation for some time on this very sort of notion. We thought we'd work in isolation together and bring you this great screencast.
All right, so basically, where we've come from over the last couple of years and where we are at now has left a lot of staff members and a lot of new teachers kind of thinking, okay, so what am I responsible for and what am I supposed to be doing? And one of the things that, of course, we're going to see in the next few hours, days, weeks, months is the creation of learning goals and success criteria. So we put a couple together for you.
And this is to help us focus on what we want to accomplish today. They should be fairly clear. The success criteria reflect our goal. And so the learning goal we have for you today
Is written, of course, in your words, right? So, and basically, it's kid friendly, or I guess teacher friendly language. And so after this presentation, we're hoping that you will say, I'll have a working understanding of assessment and how it relates to my practice.
And I think we should say it all together right now. So wherever you are, I want
Yeah.
you to get up, go over to the window, open it up,
Yeah.
and shout this out to the world.
Yeah.
Say it with me. I'll have a working understanding of assessment and how it relates to my practice.
Okay, no, but now all together, even you in the back.
Put down your pen,
Okay, here we go.
put the magazine
One,
away.
2, 3. Okay, that's very good, actually.
I think that was most people.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think so.
that's not
There,
bad.
there was a couple, I think, that maybe didn't. But success criteria then are, of course,
Well, it helps you whether you've achieved the learning goal or not. You can tell the success
Yeah,
criteria. It's
yeah.
kind of like a checklist. If you can do this, 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 and this, then you've accomplished your learning goal.
And so one of those things is basically we say, okay, at the end of this presentation, if you can say, I'll be able to discuss with my colleagues what assessment looks like according to the board and the province, then you have been successful. You've achieved the learning goal. Because the best way to demonstrate your understanding of a concept, especially a concept such as assessment, is to be able to talk to other people about it.
Sure, you take in a bunch of information, read a document, whatever it might be, but you don't really seem to, I don't think, have a full grasp of something until you can explain it to somebody else,
Yeah.
have a discussion with someone else who's on the same page, and just see where you're at. If you can define the terms, speak the language, you're going to be okay.
A lot of us are going to find ourselves on one of two sides of a pendulum. And, that pendulum is going to swing from, a very, very rigid adherence to AER policy. And,
Sure.
and of course, at the other end of the pendulum will be,
The
the
naysayers.
exact
That's
opposite.
right.
So, here we are, one side when we've swung all the way out to one side of the pendulum. These are those, the temptation on the part of some of us to fully embrace AER, to get in there and
Sure.
to letter of the law, and to really, maybe I wouldn't say over focus
But I think
on,
they get bogged down in the
but
details.
get bogged
though,
down
right?
in the details.
They'll
Thank
jump
you.
with both feet. They're so enthusiastic, and maybe
Yeah.
to the point of actually being a little bit afraid that they're not going to cover everything.
Yeah.
They really want to do a good job. They really want to make sure that they're covering what they're supposed to cover.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the details just get so overwhelming. They just
Yeah,
lose
yeah.
focus, lose track.
And they're trying to concentrate on this, on assessment, and trying to get every single kid to demonstrate mastery, that they can't cover everything that they're supposed to cover, and so their instruction almost grinds to a halt
That's right.
because they're focused too much on this.
But they have
Chris-
to learn to kind of apply some of those, those lessons that we're going to learn about assessment. Just take a single assignment. Start there. You don't have to do it with
Yeah.
every single thing
Yeah.
that you're going to do. Just apply it judiciously, and you should be okay.
Of course, the other end of the spectrum is the basically just an abhorrence of this kind of AER stuff, and I'm not
Sure.
doing this. I've never done this before. My kids don't need it. And so that's the other end of the spectrum, that at times we may find ourselves kind of saying, I'm not doing this. I don't need it in my classroom.
Sure. There's nothing wrong with being, somewhat skeptical. Even reluctance can be okay as long as you're willing to take a look at the document, see what's in there, and try
Yeah.
to find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
But just shutting down entirely and thinking there's nothing new for me here. I can't learn anything more.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly sound in my teaching practice.
Yeah. Because there's good stuff that's coming from from some of these initiatives. There really is.
Sure.
There's, I think that there's some really good stuff and really good stuff for our students.
And both of these stances aren't necessarily helpful, right?
No,
If,
no,
if you're so gung ho, you're just taking everything that they're giving you and just trying to find a way to make it work somehow at the
yeah,
expense of your sanity and perhaps your
yeah,
classroom. That's no
yeah,
good.
yeah.
And just deciding not to buy into anything at all is not helpful either.
Yeah, and the thing, you need to be a champion of the middle of the road.
Sure,
And I love the middle of the road, but getting there and finding that middle of the road,
it can be really frustrating.
it can be very, very frustrating. And it's tough to figure out, how am I going to take what I have, take this new stuff that's coming, and put it together in a way that's meaningful, and it's not going to take me hours and hours
Sure.
and hours and hours.
And it may seem like you're just making a compromise and perhaps watering things down to make it work, but it really takes a lot of strength, I think, to find that middle ground and just find a way to make this work for you and your students.
A little bit of context for where all this came from. In 2010, the ministry put together a growing success document.
And you may have seen this, sitting around your department office. Perhaps you have a copy at home. We weren't held directly responsible to, put all of this stuff into practice in our classrooms immediately. But I mean, everything that we're going to find in our later document, and what we're going to focus on today, kind of has its roots in this growing success document.
Yeah, yeah. And really, it's where everything begins. And so as the provinces kind of rolled this out, boards were given the option to basically, within the next 3 years, you need to. So here we are, it's 2013, and WRDSB is now putting this into place for us. And to help us with that, of course, now this is the AER Handbook. And this is what's been handed out across departments and to teachers and across the board.
And it takes a lot of the information that we found in the growing success document and puts it in more of I think, a user-friendly and directly applicable sort of format. And even in the title itself, I mean, just handbook, it's a book, fits in your hand, and it's not overly detailed. It tells you exactly what you need to know and gives you some suggestions how you can implement this in your classroom. It's very user-friendly. It's easy to flip through. And it's what we need to become familiar with because it's the official board policy.
And that's a good point, because this is the policy. So if you want the letter of the law, if you want to know, okay, what can I do with this? What can I do with this? What's the rule on this? If that's the kind of person you are, and there are a lot of those
Sure.
individuals, sometimes we're all that individual. Okay, just tell me what I have to do. This is where you would look. The trick is figuring out how this fits with, of course, everything else.
Sure.
And we're not going to dwell so much today on the evaluation and the reporting.
No, we need to focus on the assessment that kind of suits our purposes for today.
Yeah.
It's more of an immediate concern for all of us because we're constantly assessing in our classes and have to find a way to implement some of these ideas into what we're doing every day.
And when we talk about assessment, we could talk, for hours and hours and hours about that kind of assessment that we're all very, very comfortable with. And that would be, okay, if I said to you, okay, so tell me a couple ways that you've assessed your students.
Right away, I'd probably jump into things like, I give an exam at the end of the course. My class has to write an essay.
Yeah.
We do a
And
book
so
report.
these, of course, are all examples of assessment of learning, right? Which is one of those three, the three big ones, right? So
Sure.
assessment of learning. And of course, these are really, this ties in very heavily to evaluation. And we know what these things are. We've got this in spades. Any teacher can tell you how I'm going to evaluate my students.
And these
at
are
the
the things I have my students do for marks. These are the things that count on the report card.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
It's pretty clear, I think, for most people what assessment of learning is.
And they'll look different for each of us in different subject areas.
That's right.
Right? But the whole point is that, like when hospitality throws together a meal for a group of teachers, that is assessment of learning, because those students are being graded on that project. All their work up until then has built them up so that they can put out a meal for a group of teachers. In art, when students are working and getting that critical feedback on a piece of artwork that they're putting together, it's all
right.
leading up to the final task, this final production. And so there may be involved in that a lot of process work that goes into it. So the project is not just about the final product, but it's about the process that you took to get there. So there's all kinds, but we've got this.
Yeah, this is nothing new. I mean, everyone has done this over and over, right? So we understand what assessment of learning is. It's the next bit that's a little bit, not problematic, but a bit more perhaps mysterious for some folks. But I don't think it will be after we
Explain it.
some of these points.
So assessment as learning kind of remedies those questions like, are we training our students? Are we helping our students for what comes next? So
Sure.
are we in a place where we're putting together, are we preparing them for the workplace? Are we preparing them for college? Are we preparing them for university? And of course, this is all tied very closely to,
This deals with our learning skills, right?
yeah.
And you've seen these before, of course, on the interim reports. We just went through that. Also, our report cards um, all reflect learning skills. We have to know what these are. We make comments on them, anecdotal and otherwise. And these are learning skills that help students, yeah, no matter where they're going to end up in life, whether they're going to post-secondary education, the workplace. If they have some of these skills down, it's going to really help them.
Yeah. Assessment as learning ties in closely with not just the learning skills and evaluating them on their learning skills, but helping to teach them these learning skills, helping them to improve for themselves.
Yeah, it helps them reflect on their own learning process,
Yeah.
right? How they go about doing things.
The last one, which arguably is the one that we struggle with, I think, sometimes the most.
Yeah, this is the big shift for most teachers, for sure.
Yeah, is the assessment for learning. This is this kind of piece, and so we'll talk about some of these things now, and then we'll kind of leave things after this slide. But assessment for learning, really, we put drives instruction at the top of this because really, assessment can help inform you about when to move on, about when you need to pause
right.
and reflect. And that's what we talk about when we talk about driving instruction. If you are blind to what's happening in your class and you don't take some of the opportunity that those kids may have to tell you, okay, hold on, slow down, because we do
That's right.
not understand this concept.
So a lot of us have been shocked. You give a test, you get a terrible sort of result from your class, and you wonder what happened exactly. But by then, yeah, it's too late. We've had the test. It's time to move on. And so
Mhm.
the whole assessment for learning gives you a chance to check in, see where your students are at while you're in the process of learning the material.
Yeah.
And so you have to drill down and stop, pause, see where they're at,
Yeah.
and just kind of change the way you're teaching or what you're teaching. And that can really help students when it comes time for the final evaluation. So everything still counts, right? And that's one of the things that people get bogged down on is why will I do all these assignments if they're not
It's
going to
this
be
one right
evaluated
here.
on them?
It's this one right here. The not on the report card that people kind of really respond to and say, what do you mean it's not on the report card? If I'm marking it and it's going to be in my book, what do you mean
Sure,
I'm not going
sure.
to put it in the report card? And if I don't put it on the report card, kids won't care about it and they won't do it.
Yeah, I think the other side of that is you can argue that it actually is on the report card in
Yeah.
the sense that you look
Yeah.
at your final marks, and say you have 5 different assignments that is counted for assessment of learning, and you have 5 that kind of assessment for learning. You can see what they've done for the assessment for learning portion, and depending on how well they did, it really is reflected on the final mark. If
Mhm.
they missed a couple opportunities to hand in a formative assignment, if they haven't done well in a certain area, it's going to be reflected in the final mark. And the other side, of course, if they have done really well in some of these formative bits,
Mhm.
their mark should be higher because they'll be at a higher level when it comes time for that evaluation because they've taken those steps along the way and because the teacher has changed direction perhaps.
And
to
has
help
really,
them.
yeah, and has provided a lot of feedback, and so that students know descriptive and timely feedback for students.
Yeah, because how often have you given feedback on a test? So, well, you
Yeah.
need to work on this or that, but it's too late. You've
It's
moved
too
on.
late. Yeah. It's like giving feedback on an exam.
Yeah.
And that about wraps it up for us here in this first little introduction. Now, for many of you, this is probably a lot of review.
I would think, yeah, for most of this, for sure. These terms have been floating around for some time. All of us are familiar with, assessment for learning. We've heard of. We have an idea what it is. We've been doing this for a while. Um,
And so now what we do is that we need to take this and we need to apply it to our practice. And this is where it gets specific, but this is where we're going to get a lot of help along the way and in the next couple of steps. Okay, well, thanks very much. You've been a great audience. Actually, to be honest, we don't know if you've been a good audience, but we're assuming.
well, we like to think that everybody's paying attention as much as you can. It's early in the morning or late at night, depends when you're watching this.
Okay, and now Jeff wrote a song for you.